Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak English because my French is not so good. It's a pleasure to spend time with you. I just landed from San Francisco yesterday, and I have been spending much of my time doing research about the future of all things, innovation, culture, digital transformation. And two of the biggest things that I'm studying today are customer experience and employee experience. And it is because those two things alone will dictate how we use technology to solve problems and to also compete for the future. I laugh, though, because I'm going to tell you this story using PowerPoint, and that's not very innovative, but hopefully it's okay. One of the things that I believe is missing from business conversations today, when we talk about technology, when we talk about shifting to the cloud, when we talk about new operations and new processes and new systems, when we talk about digital transformation and steering committees and executive sponsorship, we miss often the philosophy of why we're doing this, what the purpose is. And one of the greatest challenges that exists in front of all of us is that we know business as it was yesterday. Very few of us understand what it takes to compete for tomorrow. And these are certainly interesting times, as we all know. Change is happening all around the world. I call that digital Darwinism. Technology is evolving. Society is evolving, and there's this challenge, there's this fight between those who want the world to advance, those who embrace all new technologies, those who are changing because of new technologies. And then there are those who want to stay the same. They don't want to change. They like things just the way they are. And this is creating tension between the two. And so our job isn't just to facilitate change, isn't just to enable change through technology, but it's also to build bridges between us and the human beings who do want to change and the human beings that don't want to change. And that's difficult. When we look at the state of our world and we say, Brian, what are some of the hardest things that we have to think about with employee experience and customer experience? And I think this picture captures it the best. This is our new customer. This is our new employee. But then there is also this old employee, this old customer. And when we talk to executives or when we think about roadmaps or strategies, we tend to focus on the woman in the front. She's the only one that we could relate to, or a lot of executives can relate to, because she's in the moment. And we can look at that and say, look at all these other people. They're not in the moment. They're just taking pictures and they're missing everything that's happening. And we tend to judge that, and it's a metaphor for how we approach decision-making for the future. We can't make decisions about how to be different if we keep making decisions on the past. If we keep using the past as our center of reference, we're going to miss what it takes to be competitive, both as an employer and also as a brand. Because you can flip the perspective on this. I would argue that everybody in this picture is in the moment. They just choose to live it differently. And who am I to judge them? Who am I to say how they should experience a moment? I can just simply try to understand it and build a construct to make those experiences better. So we could say, look at this selfish woman here in the front row, not sharing this moment with all of her Facebook friends that couldn't be there. That's not very nice. This is why we have to plan. And when we plan, all innovation starts with a shift in perspective, how we see the world, how we see the problems, how we see the opportunities. And in my research in corporate transformation and corporate innovation, one of the things that I have found was very profound, very interesting, was that when companies are investing in new technologies, they think they're innovating. So the shift to the cloud may seem like a big innovation to you, but we have to ask ourselves, are we really innovating or are we iterating? And the distinction is important because iteration is really what most companies are doing. It's not a bad thing, but it's important that we understand the difference. Iteration is doing the same things better. So we might shift to the cloud, we might introduce new technologies, but we're only doing the same things better. That's not necessarily innovation. Innovation is doing new things to unlock new value. And the key word is value, because value is changing and value is evolving. And the combination of these two things leads to disruption, which is doing new things that make the old things obsolete. And this is why we face such a great change in front of us, because customers and employees are starting to experience disruption. They're starting to cause disruption because they are doing new things that make the old things obsolete. Once you experience new value, you don't go backwards. Yet we insist as employers and as brands of giving experiences that force people to go backwards. A lot of the technology that we've implemented in our organizations today, a lot of the processes and philosophies that exist, were invented before the internet. Times have changed. And this is an example of iteration. Every new television that comes out ships with one of these. And I don't think any of us actually like the remote control. We sort of just use them because we have to. So when there's a new technology, we say, oh, Netflix, let's put a button. On average, there are 70 buttons on the remote control. And we live in an era where we control everything like this. Yet no one has decided to say, maybe it's time for innovation in how we interact with this device. And this is an example of how we have to think about customer experience and employee experience moving forward. You are given a gift of new technology that can do new things, that can unlock new value. And it's our choice to do that. And so the two trends that we have to think about are customer experience and employee experience. And depending on where you sit in the organization, what we're really talking about is human beings. Human beings that are different than you and I. Human beings that may not necessarily appreciate or want to work with the constructs that we have presented to them. I mean, I can see it in the audience. We all have one of these. And whether we know it or not, we are all changing. It's not just the kids, it's all of us. We look at our phones or our mobile devices about 1,500 times every week. Some of us more. And that adds up to about 177 minutes each day. And I want you to think about what you're doing in each of those minutes. You're learning how to interact differently. You're learning how to find information faster. You're learning how to communicate with people in new ways, whether it's shorter texts or animated GIFs or videos or infographics. We're learning how to communicate in new ways. And when we go to work or when we go to shop, we have to go through these old websites, these old surveys, these old forms, these old processes that just suck. This is the new world. As parents, you might look at this and say, oh, in my day, I used to actually be at the party. I used to talk to people. But these kids, oh my goodness. But to them, it is the best party ever. Who am I to judge it? It's just different. It's a new world. How they experience life, how they experience work, how they experience shopping, it's all very different. To them, the priorities are, do I have Wi-Fi? Do I have battery? Do I have connection? Because if I don't, I'm disconnected from the world. And all the while, some of us are saying, well, put your phones down. Put your mobile devices down. Live life. But we can't, because it's unlocked a new sense of living, a new sense of being of which we can't go backwards. And our policies, our strategies for new technology and customer experience and employee experience have to take these into consideration. The challenge is that every single day we go to work, we have meetings all day, we have work, we have deadlines, we have things that we're always falling behind on. So where is the time to think differently? Where is the inspiration? Where's the motivation to think differently, to act differently? Well, let's take a tour of customer experience and employee experience and see if we can't answer that question ourselves. Because the only person who could lead change leaving this event is you. We're not going to do things differently if we don't do things differently. Every expert around the world agrees that customer experience is the new competitive advantage. The way to compete for the future is by investing in customer experiences. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that everybody has a different definition of customer experience. We tend to look at technologies, we look at touch points, we look at the journey, but we don't necessarily look at it from the customer's perspective. The person who's different, the person who lives their life on this device, because it changes, or it should inspire, how we implement technology, how we design new touch points, how we design new processes. The customer experience can only be defined one way, through their eyes. The customer experience is the sum of all engagements that they have with your company during the life cycle. So it's how they would describe each moment and the sum of all moments. So we can't just measure things by customer lifetime value or net promoter score. We have to look at what people actually feel and do throughout the entire journey. Because people will stop doing business with the companies that aren't delivering great experiences. I mean, just look at the state of the taxi industry in Paris alone. They're so disrupted and they're so angry, but people don't care. It's sad, but it's the reality. They would rather use chauffeur privé or Uber because it's a better experience for them. It's not like the taxi industry did not know technology was around. It was a choice to not compete. So much so that people believe that experiences are so important that people will pay more for a product or service if they know they're going to get a better experience. People are telling you they want a better experience, but they want an experience their way. And we keep forcing old experiences upon them. Only 1% of customers feel like their businesses are catering to them, that are meeting their expectations. That's just not a good number. That's horrible. Your competition is everywhere. It's not just your traditional competitors. It's all of the new services, all of the new apps, all of the new companies that give a great experience to someone. The user experience, the user interface, all of these things become the standard for every business. So Uber, for example, has affected every industry: healthcare, finance. Think about a bank. What does a bank mean to someone who uses Uber or Tinder or Airbnb? The entire concept of the experience isn't just in the design of the app, it's in the service, how the service works. What's the value proposition from the company? As we become more connected as individuals, we become more demanding, more empowered, more informed, maybe even over-informed. We're definitely elusive. We rely and trust things outside of what the company tells us. We expect transparency within the organization, which is one of the reasons why blockchain is so disruptive. All of these things add up to a different customer, a different market. But what they also add up to is the answers, the insights necessary to guide how we change. Because if we're not changing to the benefit of someone, then what are we doing? We're just using technology for the sake of using new technology. It just gives us iteration at best. I understand that some of you already understand this. I also understand that when we go back to the office, we still have executives who insist on seeing the world the old way, who talk to shareholders and stakeholders and focus on delivering them value quarter to quarter. But all of these things don't matter if your customers start choosing other companies. What they value, the services that they want, the way that companies become part of their lifestyle regardless of the industry, do not align with how executives are making decisions about the future. It just doesn't. They're continuing to iterate while the market is splitting. And this creates an experience divide. This is true for customers, and this is true for employees. Many of you have already seen this, but these are the core problems of digital transformation. So what is digital transformation? It's the realignment of or the investment in new technology, but also business models and processes to drive new value for customers and employees. At least that's what it should be. Otherwise, it's just investing in new technology. But digital transformation, in all of my research, is at its most compelling, at its most effective when there is purpose to deliver new value, that we understand how customers and employees are different, and our work is pointed at doing those things that are differently and inventing new systems, new processes, new metrics, new procedures, new programs to meet those needs. For 4 years straight, I have studied digital transformation worldwide. And as of now, these are the top 3 initiatives. We have to accelerate innovation. We need a much more modern IT and operational infrastructure. We need to be agile, but we also have to be agile in how we make decisions because we have to be able to adapt to change, not just invest in things for the long term like we have in the past. And this is really difficult because in any conversation I have with HR or IT or CEOs, it's always the same. Well, we spent so much money on these things, and we just don't see why we need to invest more money right now. It's a tremendous cost, and we have responsibility to deliver value back to our shareholders. But the answer is, yes, it's a cost. I'm sorry. But think about it as an investment. You can't compete for the future if you continue to compete for the past. And this is what so many companies are doing. So what I studied was this. Here are the 6 phases a company goes through when they're going through digital transformation. And only when you do right things do you progress. I've studied so many times how companies move forward but then move backwards because they missed certain things like, well, what does the new employee want? What does the new customer want? Oh, well, those answers give us direction. If you Google the 6 stages of digital transformation, you could download this research for free. It's basically a checklist of how to guide your change. And it involves customer experience, and it involves employee experience. But believe it or not, even with all of this common sense, all of this logic, when I ask companies, what is the number one thing that helps guide your digital transformation? They'll say, understanding the evolving needs, behaviors, and preferences of the new customer. And then I'll ask, what is your number one challenge? Usually, it's culture. The company doesn't want to take chances. The company is risk averse. But at the same time, the top challenge is understanding preferences, behaviors, and values of new customers. It's the number one catalyst and the number one challenge. Yet, nobody's looking at what people want. Only half of the companies I studied have mapped the customer journey. Of that, Only 20% have looked at what the mobile journey looks like. Yet we all know we live in a mobile-first world. So the fact that we're not even trying to answer these questions is why we have part of the problem. You have an increasingly, every single day, a mobile-first behavior that's changing how people make decisions. It's completely disrupted the funnel. It's completely disrupted the traditional journey. Almost every single customer that uses a mobile device does not have a brand in mind when they're trying to make a decision. And almost 3/4 of them will make a decision to work with the company that was useful in what Google calls micro moments. So before we move into employee experience, some of the questions that we need to think about leaving here is, how does my digital customer expect to do business with me? What do they prefer and value? And how do they make decisions? This should guide you to look at things differently. The same thing that's happening in your markets, how the customer's evolving, is the same thing that's playing out with employees. They don't want to come to old traditional companies because they don't think that way. Most that are graduating from university are thinking, I'll just start my own company. I'll just be an entrepreneur. Why not? Everybody else is doing it. Can we change that? Can we attract that talent? Absolutely. But once they come into the organization, if they're not working in ways that are natural and intuitive to them, if we're forcing them to work in ways that were designed in the 1950s and 60s, it's not going to feel natural. In about a week, I have a small ebook coming out that uses cartoons as a way of communicating the culture challenge that many companies face, because I feel that I could throw data and I could throw text in beautiful white papers at you, but sometimes when you laugh, it kind of makes you say, I never thought about it that way. I don't know. I'm trying everything to get businesses to change. This is one of the cartoons from that ebook. What if we treated customers the same way we treat employees? But we don't treat employees well either. In a Gallup study, and I wanted to share this with you because I'm sure it's true around the world, is that people feel that they are not engaged at companies. Because what happens is, the more we use these devices, think about your favorite apps, think about your favorite networks. The more we use these devices, the more we start to program our own expectations that we're the most important person in the world. All of these services revolve around us. It's why when, say, you take a picture of your food and you put it on Facebook and no one replies, you feel sad. And so maybe I need to take a better picture. What's wrong? I thought everybody in the world was waiting for me to post this picture. So what it means to be engaged is different than before. And when people are not engaged, it costs your company a lot of money in productivity. It's not anything we're going to solve by saying, should we have a remote work plan? Should we have open offices? Should we try to be like Google and have a kitchen that serves free food? Those are just things. We have to start asking ourselves, what does the new employee expect and how they want to work? How do their brains operate so that we can take those insights and design them into more modern business experiences? This is a quote that I did some research coming into this event so that I can have some really up-to-date knowledge. One of the most interesting things that I heard from a big global enterprise was that one of our challenges is that we have old people making decisions for young people. But it's a very strange thing, because it's not like that's never been the case. It's always been the case. Executives are typically older, and they're making decisions about younger customers and younger employees. So what happened? Well, technology. Technology has changed everything. It's disrupting us, but it's also giving us the tools to solve for that. This was their quote, so don't blame me, but their quote said, we are not replacing or retraining older executives and employees to think differently about how the future is happening right now. So they stand in the way of progress. Some of the greatest efforts are thwarted are challenged by people in the organization who make it difficult. Politics, egos, sabotage. It's all human. What we need are to give keys to people to start to feel like it's not only okay to change, we're incentivized to change. When I talk to a lot of CHROs or people leading HR efforts, I'll hear, well, Brian, one of our greatest disruptions and challenges in the company are millennials. Oh, what do you mean, millennials? What's the challenge? Well, they think differently, they want to work differently, they want to learn new things, and well, the challenge is that they're all special. They all got trophies as kids, and we didn't. We had to work hard, and these are the way things are, and why can't they just follow the rules? And I'll sit there and say, well, I don't have an answer for you. I can't tell you why they just won't follow your rules, but I can tell you they just won't follow your rules. So if you want to attract new talent, if you want to keep young, innovative thinking and creativity in your organization, we can't expect them to change. They're not going to change. In fact, it's probably good that they're disrupting us. So we're going to have to change. But doing so is actually going to make our business more competitive, more agile, more relevant in a new economy. Because inside the company, it's not just a matter of can we improve employee experience or can we improve employee engagement. It all comes down to a bunch of stuff. Number one, I think culture is underestimated and underappreciated in the company. In fact, when I talk to executives and I say, hey, how's your company culture? Oh, it's amazing. Then I'll ask an employee, how's your company culture? Oh, it sucks. It sucks. Well, what's the gap? How do we understand that? Well, let's start with, it's like customer experience. What is culture? Well, it's comprised of how we work, how we hire, how we reward, how we train, how we engage and how we communicate, how we incentivize people to change, how we incentivize people to learn. Most people hate working in big companies so much that they're willing to be part of the gig economy. I think the gig economy is horrible if you want to actually put money in your pocket. But people are so willing to work on their own schedule, in their own way, that they're willing to drive a car, they're willing to deliver food, they're willing to open up their home for rent, just to have that experience that they want. But there are insights in that we could take, that we could use in our employee programs that are a bit more modern. A lot of companies already are looking at how do we employ these contractors in the same way that others like Uber or Airbnb are employing them. How can we create new training programs, new onboarding programs that are relevant to them rather than forcing them to try to work our way? It's a trend that's only going to continue to grow, but I can promise you this, in my work on this front, that even trying to consider how to work with contractors or gig employees gives us the insights of how to attract full-time employees and keep full-time employees as well. I call this the employee engagement gap. I'm studying all kinds of things just to try to get to the answer of what's the real problem, what's the real solution for organizations. I think it's just that we don't understand what employee engagement means. What does somebody expect from their company? We often think it's about money, but it's not. People will say it's about some sense of freedom, some sense of creative license, some sense of learning. When I ask executives how important employee engagement was, they all said it's super important. But when I ask employees, well, how do you rate your engagement? People say, More than half of employees are actually neutral about their company culture. More than 1/4 of employees feel that their culture is actually dysfunctional. So when we look at stats that show just how disengaged people are, how people don't want to actually be at the company, these are real things. We're not going to solve this by shifting to the cloud. That's an enabler to do something better or different. So part of the challenge that you have, and part of the real opportunity that you have, is bringing real change that matters to real people who are not like us, who are not like the processes that have been inside of the company for 40 years, 50 years. Remember, the same thing that's happening to customers is the same thing that happens to employees. They're learning how to communicate differently. Things like email and intranets and old training modules, it just doesn't feel normal because it's not to many people who live a mobile lifestyle. This is from a research report that I just published a couple of months ago. I had to actually ask people, what are some of the problems with your company's culture? And this was an answer that came up, believe it or not. We have desk phones. Wow. Do you make a decision about a company that you're going to join because they have desk phones? Yes. Because the desk phone represents how the company thinks about work. So does a desk, believe it or not. Most companies still provide employees with desk phones. And the reason that that's a problem is because we live in an era of, I don't know, disruptive technology on every front, like artificial intelligence, like messaging apps, conversational commerce, all of these things that are starting to not only give people new tools to communicate their way, but actually add intelligence to it. So the last thing they want is a desk phone. They want new ways to engage that mimics how they live life. And all of this requires architecture, not just information architecture, but actual experiential architecture. What is someone supposed to feel? How is someone supposed to get through their day-to-day work? One of the conversations we had at dinner last night was about disruption and artificial intelligence. And I asked, hey, raise your hand if you feel that artificial intelligence is going to take people's jobs in the white-collar industry. And everybody's hands, of course, will go up. It's one of the things that's so scary. But then I'll say, hey, do you think artificial intelligence is going to take your job? And no hands go up. Because change doesn't happen to us. It happens to everybody else, but not to us. But what if it did happen to you? Because that should scare you. That should motivate you in a way to say, how are we going to think about our employees a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Because they're going to need to learn new skills and have new jobs that stay ahead of artificial intelligence. So the questions we have to ask are, how does my employee want to excel at work? How do they want to work? What's their purpose and what do they value? What do they want to learn? These should all guide us. As Peter Drucker once famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. But what is culture? Well, let's give it a definition. Like customer experience, it is defined by the collective experiences of your employees, what they believe, what they value, and how they survive every single day. It is also defined by the vision and leadership of your executives, how they bring that to life, how you bring that to life, how you reward people for bringing this culture to life, but also, and perhaps most importantly, it is what we tolerate in terms of bad behavior or what we overlook in terms of unproductive behavior. All of these things create culture. It is a symbol, it is a result of how and why we work. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. It's a quote by George Bernard Shaw, actually out of an Oracle report that I read and very much enjoyed. There's another quote as well. We all talk of change, but none of us talk of changing ourselves. I think that's where innovation really begins. It's a shift in perspective. It's not necessarily solved by technology. Technology brings that new vision to life. It's how we decide to see the world, how we decide to accept what's different so that we can actually have not only purpose, but real work to make things better, to create new value. I believe innovation is all the work that we do to conform to the expectations, the aspirations of human beings that are different than us, instead of making them conform to our legacy perspectives, our legacy processes, and our legacy metrics of success. Mindset is the source of all innovation. I live in Silicon Valley. I can go have a cup of coffee, I can listen to all of the startups in that coffee place, and not one will say, you know what, I have a new innovation. I spent all night writing code. They'll always say, I looked at how people were having these problems, and so I created this entire solution for that. It was a shift, it was perspective, it allowed us to see something differently. For example, here's an exercise. When you go back to work and you use Word or Excel or PowerPoint, we click a 3.5-inch floppy disk to save a file. It's 2017. When's the last time you've seen one? But we've not even challenged our perspectives. We just go with it because that's what we've always done. But you have a new generation of people who don't even know what a floppy disk is. They just think it's the save icon. And so when you bring those worlds together about your employee experience and your customer experience work, it looks like this. You can take a floppy disk. Hey, have you ever seen one of these before? And say, oh, that is so cool. You 3D printed the save icon. No, it's different. Oh, you don't have history. Don't understand. And this, to me, was an example of how we're taking an analog-first perspective, our legacy perspective, and trying to make decisions about the future when they normally see it differently than we do. It's in the first step that we take that's already off. We got to take a step back in order to move forward to see things. I'm writing what I call the Agile Operations Manifesto. Looks at prioritizing individuals and interactions over processes and tools. It's experimenting in new work, experimenting in new processes, celebrating the ideas of people who are not the highest paid person in the room. It is thinking about collaboration, not hierarchy. It's thinking about engagement through beliefs and common values once we understand what those are. And it's responding to change rather than simply following a plan because that's the plan that we have and that's the plan that we've always had. These are the constructs of how we start to do things differently. We have to focus on the efforts that ensure that we have a mission that matters, that people can see how their work impacts that mission. Otherwise, what's the point? People actually want to have a personal stake in the direction of the company. They want to feel like they're contributing. That is the source of employee engagement. And when we start to really understand how it's different, we can map out the new customer experience, and we can map out the new employee experience. Because all of this takes design. This is about experience architecture first, information architecture second. It gives our work purpose. When I talk to individuals, not just executives, but when I can get individuals in a room to talk about the real challenges in the organization, it just becomes very human. In those moments, I'm less of an analyst and more of a therapist. Because people start talking, oh, Brian, let me tell you all of the problems that we have. One of them is that there's just no sense that people can try new things because they might fail, or it's too hard, or there's too many people who are resisting the idea Or there's people who are so political that unless the idea is theirs, it won't happen. This is a symptom of bad culture. Companies are naturally risk averse because we operate within management infrastructures. And management infrastructures are designed to scale the past, make it more efficient, make it more effective, make it more profitable. But that's essentially squeezing the same orange over and over and over again. At some point, you just lose all of the juice. The only way to change that is to start getting new oranges and allowing people to feel like they can try new things and incentivizing them for actually trying new things. I believe that there's two things that we need leaving this event. One is that we all have something new to learn, new perspective, new ways of working, but we also have things that we have to unlearn, things that hold us back from actually seeing things differently. Unlearning, for example, would allow us to create the new programs and the new jobs that are going to compete in an AI economy. We can't get there through iteration. We can only get there through innovation. When I study innovation, I get a common response, which is, we're trying to hire more innovative people. Okay? But everybody could be innovative. Everybody could be creative. It's not just something that's born in your DNA. It's something that you've learned over time. It's something that you've not just perfected, but just the act of trying and learning gives you new expertise. It gives you new experience. It gives your team strength. It gives the company courage to do new things. All of those things add up to new competitive advantages for your customers and also are so attractive to prospective employees. And it's also fantastic for retaining great employees. So your programs have to incentivize risk-taking, but they also have to provide new training, new efforts, new engagement programs that cultivate this culture, that cultivate this expertise, that cultivate and reward this new performance. You are the architects of new experiences. All change starts with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, everybody.